Okay, let's continue. In the last session, we were talking about the forces that are going to be generated while grinding. We started with the importance why we need to study the grinding forces that we discussed. Then we talked about the specific cutting energy, the amount of energy required to remove unit volume of material. That energy is called as specific energy, and that energy is going to be utilized for these things: chip formation, flowing effect, and the friction between the abrasive and work surface. So that specific energy will be utilized for those things that we have discussed. Then I think we talked about this temperature also, why we need to study the temperature that we discussed over here. And the temperature in case of grinding, the delta T, that is change in temperature, is going directly proportional to grinding wheel diameter, wheel depth, or you can call it as depth of cut also. This capital V is surface speed of the grinding wheel, and small v is speed of the work surface. And this delta T is going to be directly proportional to wheel diameter, depth of cut, and surface speed of the grinding wheel. So if you increase either of those three, the temperature is going to increase. Whereas if you decrease the small v, that is speed of the work surface, if you increase that one, temperature is going to be decrease, because that is inversely proportional. And if you look at all the parameters, the depth of cut is going to be more significant compared to all others, because the power of D is 3 by 4. So a small change in depth of cut is going to increase the temperature or even decrease the temperature drastically. So that way this is going to be more important in case of temperature generation. Okay. Now temperature generation you can observe in the following phenomena. The first one is spark. So what is exactly uh, reason behind the sparking? The reason is when you rotate the grinding wheel against the work surface, the material removed from the work surface in the form of chips, when that chips comes in contact with oxygen present in the air, that chips undergo oxidation. The oxidation is nothing but the exothermic reaction, and because of that oxidation the chips starts to glow, and that glowing chips are nothing but the sparks. So if you grind a work surface in absence of oxygen, instead of observing spark, you will only get the chips removed from the work surface. So chips, the spark is nothing but the glowing chips because of exothermic reaction between the chips and the oxygen in the atmospheric air. Now, the nature of spark, its shape, size, its color, all those things are going to be dependent of the material which is being ground. Means if you have a sound knowledge of the sparking phenomenon, you can predict the material which is being grind from the nature of the spark, whether it is continuous or intermittent, whether it is white, yellow, or reddish, and shape of the spark. If you observe all those things, you can predict which material is being ground. Next is tempering. This one you must have studied in the MSM. Tempering is the process that usually carried out as a stress relieving process. After hardening, there would be some thermal stresses developed in the material which are undesirable, and to remove those stresses, usually we carry out the tempering. But if that tempering is being carried out unnecessarily, that is going to soften the workpiece material. And softened workpiece material may not be desirable. So this tempering has to be avoided. After tempering, if temperature exceeds further, for tempering, there has to be certain temperature range depending upon the material. And if that temperature range exceeds further, the next phenomena will be burning. When we can say that the material is being burned is if you observe the formed chips. If those chips are bluish in color, if you observe that the chips are slightly blue in color, then you can easily predict that the material is being burned or it is being overheated. And because of that overheating, the chips has got bluish in color, and that phenomena is called as burning. After burning, the next phenomena is heat checking. We know that whenever material is heated, it is supposed to expand, and when you cool it, it is going to be contracted. And if that heating and cooling is there, because of that heating and cooling, the material is going to undergo expansion and contraction. And because of that expansion and contraction, sometimes there may be a formation of cracks on the work surface, and the cracks that are going to observe on the work surface because of the temperature generation are called as heat checking. The cracks are going to be perpendicular to the direction of the grinding. Next, residual stresses. Residual stresses, when you, as I said earlier, when you heat the material, it is supposed to expand. And when you cool the material, it is supposed to contract. Now suppose on heating, suppose this is the original dimension of the material, and on heating it has got expanded by this much amount. On cooling, the material is supposed to return back to its original state, right? Whatever expansion has occurred because of increase in temperature, if I am cooling it to its original temperature, the same dimension has to be contracted to its original shape, right? Now after expansion, if I cool this material instantaneously and I don't provide sufficient time to material to reach its original dimensions, what will happen? The material was in expanded condition. I cooled that material instantaneously, so its dimension has got increased than its actual dimension. So the stresses that are going to be generated in the material are tensile in nature. The same thing will happen, or reverse thing will happen, when material has been contracted, and when material try to expand to its original dimension, and if you restrict that expansion, the stresses generated would be compressive. The whether these stresses are tensile or compressive, depending upon that one, we need to take corrective action, because in most of the cases these stresses are undesirable. For certain applications, those stresses are desirable, but in most of the cases, the residual stresses are going to be undesirable, because residual stresses reduces the life of the workpiece material. Because of the residual stresses, there is going to be failure of that work material prior to its actual life. There would be more corrosion, there would be earlier failure of the material because of the cyclic loading and all. And because of that one, the residual stresses are undesirable, and we need to take care of those stresses. Next, grinding wheel wear. Now to talk about this grinding wheel wear, Let me explain this one. Okay. Suppose this is a grinding wheel. It has got certain abrasives on its periphery. Now it has started rotating. There is some workpiece. That workpiece is being machined. Now, when this grinding wheel start rotating after certain period or after undergoing certain machining, it is but obvious that the cutting edges of the abrasives are going to be worn out, and there will be a development of flat surfaces on the grinding on the abrasive. Means if this is the initial shape of the abrasive, after machining for certain time, the cutting edge will be worn out and you will get a flat surface on the abrasive. Okay. Now the development of this flat surface by warning out the cutting edge of the abrasive is nothing but the first kind of wear, that is atricious wear. First one is atricious wear. Now the reason for this atricious wear could be physical as well as chemical reaction. Physical means the abrasive is going to be in a contact with work surface and there is going to be friction and all between the abrasive and workpiece, and because of that one there is going to be some wear of the abrasive. Additionally, second one is chemical reaction. We know that at room temperature or even at elevated temperature, the reasons of the atricious wear. First one, as I said, physical. Physical is nothing but the direct contact between the abrasive and work surface. That contact makes the abrasive worn out. And second reason is chemical reaction. So sometimes at room temperature and sometimes at elevated temperature, because now we know the temperature range of the grinding process. And at that elevated temperature, there might be a reaction between abrasive and the work surface. And because of that reaction, there will be diffusion, chemical degradation, and decomposition of the grain or abrasive grain. And because of all those things, there is going to be some wear of the abrasive, and because of that wear we get a flat surface on that abrasive, and obtaining or getting that flat surface is nothing but the abrasive wear, sorry, atricious wear. Now next is, so this is grinding wheel. It was having one abrasive. Now when you started using that grinding wheel, we got a flat surface. This much area has got worn out and now we have got the flat surface. So now what we expect? We expect that the abrasive should fracture in this orientation, so that I will get one cutting edge over here. Should fracture in this orientation, so that I will get one point over here, or should fracture in this orientation. Or in other words, once that abrasive has got a flat surface, it should fracture in some orientation, offering a new fresh cutting edge. That is what we expect from the abrasive. And this breaking of the abrasive to expose new cutting edge is called as grain fracture. The first one was atricious wear, second one is grain fracture. Okay, so now we expect that abrasive should break in some orientation and provide a cutting edge. That is next kind of the wear, grain fracture. After that, third one is bond fracture. Bond fracture means On grinding wheel, there initially was one abrasive, we got a flat surface. After that, it broke in this orientation, offering one cutting edge over here, then broke in this orientation, offering another cutting edge over here, or in this orientation, offering cutting edge over here. But after that, at one instant, this whole abrasive will be vanished. And what will happen? You will get a flat grinding wheel. Okay, in that condition there will be some portion of the abrasive that is inside the wheel or inside the bonding material that has not been exposed yet. Now what we expect from that grinding wheel? This whole abrasive should get dislodged from the grinding wheel. Means when there was a flat surface, we expected that it should break in some orientation, offering a cutting edge. But now situation is there isn't any possibility of that offering cutting edge by grain fracture also. So now what should happen? This whole grain has to be get out of the grinding wheel. And when it is going to be possible? That would be possible only when the bond holding the abrasive has got broke. So this bond is supposed to break and this grain should come out of the grinding wheel. So what will happen? Some layer of the grinding wheel will be gone and there will be exposure of the next abrasive, and that wear is called as bond fracture. So first one is atricious wear, that is wear of the abrasive and development of flat surface. After that, the abrasive should break in some orientation, offering new cutting edge, that is grain fracture. And after that, the whole grain has to be come out of the grinding wheel, offering the abrasives that are inside the bonding material, and that is possible with the bond fracture. Okay, any doubt till this point? Any doubt, any query? Let me know. Okay, next, grinding ratio. Grinding ratio is the ratio of the volume of material removed. Means this is a grinding wheel and this is workpiece. Now when you rotate the grinding wheel, provide relative motion to workpiece. When grinding wheel removes material from the work surface, some material from grinding wheel also going to be worn out. The ratios are going to be different. Workpiece is going to have more wear rate compared to grinding wheel. Okay, but both wheel as well as workpiece are going to worn out, and the ratio of those two is nothing but the grinding ratio. So the volume of material removed, that is from workpiece, to volume of wheel wear, and that ratio is called as grinding ratio. The range for grinding ratio varies in between 2 to 200. So if you take the ratio of workpiece material removed and grinding wheel wear, that minimum value could be 2 and maximum could be 200. Next, dressing, truing and shaping of the grinding wheel. Okay. So in grinding wheel wear, we saw 3 wears. First one, atricious wear, then grain fracture, and then bond fracture. Okay. So usually what is expected, these 3 wears occur automatically. The first one is going to be there, atricious wear, that is wear of the abrasive offering a flat surface, that is going to be there. Now once that atricious wear is there, what we expect, a grain should fracture so that you will get fresh cutting edge, and at certain period of time or after certain uh, condition, that whole grain should come out of the wheel by bond fracture. Now this is expected to happen with the grinding wheel, but sometimes this won't happen naturally. Means the grinding wheel was there, it was having one abrasive on its surface, it got worn out, then it got fractured in some orientation, and after a certain period, this whole abrasive got dislodged from the wheel surface. But now, if these three phenomena does not occur naturally, then we need to do this one manually. So what we need to do, once that abrasive has got worn out, it got fractured also, and after certain period of time, the wheel has got a flat surface and it has got very few abrasives on its outer periphery, and that too having a flat surface. So what we need to do, we need to remove some material from this grinding wheel so that the abrasives which are on the inner surface of the grinding wheel will get exposed. And once those abrasives has got exposed, then you can continue with the machining process. So exposing those abrasives by removing some material from the grinding wheel surface, that is nothing but the dressing. Now dressing has got certain techniques that we are going to discuss in upcoming slides. Now, in addition to dressing, there is another term that we are going to take a look of is truing. The truing means, again power cut is there, hopefully. आवाज येतोय का रे माझा? Am I audible? Okay, another power failure was there. So what were we discussing? Truing. Yes. The truing means when you carry out the grinding process with a grinding wheel, sometimes what happens, the grinding wheel wear will not be uniform. Suppose there is one huge cavity on this surface. This much material has got removed due to some random reason. This might happen when you use a grinding wheel, the wear is going to be uneven. Now what will happen if I use this grinding wheel to remove material from the work surface? Because of this cavity or uneven surface on the grinding wheel, there is going to be have adverse effect on surface finish of the workpiece, as well as because of this uneven surface there are going to be vibrations, and those vibrations are going to result in chatter marks. Chatter marks are nothing but the uh, marks that are going to occur on the work surface because of vibrations in the machine tools. And This increase in roughness value or appearance of the charter marks is not desirable. So what we need to do, we need to remove some layer from this grinding wheel so that you will get a true circle, and obtaining that true circle by removing some material from the grinding wheel surface, that operation is called as the truing. You can get the difference between truing and dressing over here. The purpose of truing is getting a true circular shape that you can see over here. The intention is getting a circular shape, whereas dressing is exposing the fresh abrasive by removing some material from the grinding wheel surface. The techniques that are used for the dressing: first one, using diamond point tool or diamond cluster. You can see over here in this sketch. This is the dressing of the abrasive wheel or grinding wheel using the diamond point tool. So this is a steel bar and its point will be a diamond. The whole thing will not be made up of diamond. There would be a bar of steel or some metal and its point will be of diamond. And when this wheel is rotating, this diamond pointed tool will be moved across the wheel periphery so that there will be a removal of a layer from the grinding wheel surface, and that is going to expose the fresh abrasives that are going to act as a cutting tool and remove the material. So the first technique is using a diamond shaped or diamond point tool. Second one, a star shaped steel disc. That also you can see in the same sketch. This is the tool where you can find these black colored star shaped disc. This is tool holder in which those discs are mounted using this screw, and this whole thing will be pressed. The operation you can see over here. This is grinding wheel that is rotating, and this star shaped uh, disc holder tool will be pressed against the grinding wheel. So there will be removal of layer from the grinding wheel surface, and there will be exposure of the fresh abrasives. That is the second technique. Third one, abrasive sticks. Abrasive sticks means a stick made up of abrasive material. The sketch is not shown over here, but abrasive sticks are usually used for softer wheels. If wheel is soft in nature and if you want to dress that wheel, you can go for the abrasive stick. It will be a stick made up of abrasive material. Wheel will be rotating and this stick will be moved across the grinding wheel surface when it is in motion, so that there would be removal of layer from the grinding wheel surface and exposure of the fresh abrasives. Now these things are applicable the bonds other than metallic, but when you are using metallic bonded wheels, the fourth technique will be applicable. Now from the name itself we can get that metal bonded means it is going to have electrical conductivity. Other than whether resinide bond is there or vitrified bond is there, those are electrically non-conducting bonds or insulating bonds. But metal bonded wheels, because of metal is there in the bonding, these wheels offer electrical conductivity, and because of that one, The electrical discharge machining and electrochemical machining are used to dress those wheels. Metal bonded wheels are there. You can go for the electrical discharge machining or electrochemical machining. Next one, dressing a form grinding wheel. Now, before talking about this form grinding wheel, let's discuss the form grinding first. Form grinding means this is a workpiece. It is a cylinder and which has got cavities on it. Okay, you can see over here. Now to get those stepped diameters, this is a grinding wheel. Now depending upon the depth and shape of those step diameters, similar projections will be created on the grinding wheel surface first. Those projections you can see on both the sides because those are on the outer diameter. The actual figure you can see over here. So these projections are required on the grinding wheel. This is grinding wheel, and those projections, when you use this grinding wheel to machine a work surface, similar projections or replica projections will get generated on the work surface. Now to create these projections on the grinding wheel itself, there will be one crusher roll that will be having another similar replica on its surface, and this will be used as a dressing tool to get this shape on the grinding wheel. And once we have that shape on the grinding wheel, this grinding wheel will be used to get this shaped workpiece. Now this whole process is called as form grinding because you are getting some form or some shape on the workpiece surface directly, and that operation is called as form grinding. Same you can see over here also. If I want to have this shape gear, then instead of using this kind of grinding wheel, I will use a grinding wheel having this kind of form. So when I use this grinding wheel, I will get the final product directly. I need not to go for any additional operation. And this kind of grinding is called as form grinding. Continue. So we were talking about this grindability of the material. So grindability in the sense, or before talking about this grindability, let's talk about the machinability. If I say I'm using a particular machining process to machine some material, and if I want to measure its performance, what characteristics I will usually consider? What I will consider? The material removal rate, that has to be maximum. The tool wear rate, that has to be minimum. The surface roughness should be minimum, or surface finish has to be better. The stresses, the the stresses that are going to be generated, that has to be minimum. There should be minimum surface alterations. The accuracy maximum, And if all these conditions are met, then I can say that the machining process that I have used to machine a certain product, this combination is working, or this combination is fine. And the another characteristics that decides this nature is nothing but the machinability. Now this the things that we discussed are general. We were not talking about any specific machining process. So now instead of talking about general machining process, if I replace this machining by grinding, so instead of machinability, now it will be called as grindability. So grindability means, again, all these characteristics that we just discussed, the material removal rate should be good, surface finish should be good, accuracy should be acceptable, there should not be any stresses generated in the work surface, there shouldn't be any alterations in the workpiece surface, there should not be development of crack and all. And if all those conditions are in satisfactory range, then we can say that the material is grindable, or we can apply grinding process to machine or to grind that material. That is nothing but the grindability. Okay, next is grinding operations. Now, instead of looking at this table, this one is actually a summary of all those operations. So you can take a look of this chart later on, because we are going to discuss individual process in detail. So we'll discuss that one. We need not to look about this or talk about this summary. So the first one is surface grinding. Surface grinding means when you want to have a flat surface, the workpiece is of this shape and I want to remove one layer or this top layer, this much surface is to be removed. Or even there are multiple workpieces like this one, we'll talk about that one later. So where you want to have a flat surface on the workpiece surface, this process of getting a flat surface is nothing but the surface grinding. Now surface grinding has two types, the traverse grinding and plunge grinding. The difference between those two is here the workpiece can move longitudinally as well as it is fed across the wheel, and in second case it is moving only in longitudinal direction. Only that is the difference between those two. So the grinding wheel will be rotating about its axis and the workpiece will fade across the grinding wheel to remove an uniform layer from the workpiece surface to get the flat surface. That operation is surface grinding. Now in addition to this regular technique, when you want to machine multiple small workpieces, here the small disc that you can see, these are the small workpieces whose top surface is to be ground to get the flat surface. So all those workpieces has been mounted on this work table, which is provided with rotary motion. This is vertical grinding wheel, that is also provided with rotary motion, and the relative motion between those two will remove a layer of material from all the workpieces, and all the workpieces will be machined simultaneously, producing the flat surfaces. And the operation is called as surface grinding. Next, cylindrical grinding. This one operation you can relate with the lathe operation, where what we do, the workpiece will be held between two chucks. It will be provided with the rotary motion, and grinding wheel will fade across that work surface to remove the unwanted material and to get the desired shape. Now here you can see numerous combinations of the tool and workpiece depending upon the nature of workpiece to be ground. Here you can see a flat surface, here conical, a spherical, here some cavity is there, internal grinding is there, and this one is profile grinding. But in all these operations, the workpiece generated are cylindrical in nature, because workpiece is provided with rotary motion, and we know that when on lathe machine, workpiece is mounted between headstock and tailstock and provided with rotary motion, you will get the cylindrical workpieces only. So in this or in these operations, you will get cylindrical workpieces only of all the various kinds: inclined, taper, circular, flat, internal, external, all the operations. Okay. Similar to this one, this is internal grinding. This one we already discussed over here. These are the examples of internal grinding. Centerless grinding. Centerless grinding is the difference between centerless grinding and cylindrical grinding. In cylindrical grinding, the workpiece is held between two chucks, or it will be supported and then rotated. But in case of centerless grinding, this is a grinding wheel. This is also grinding wheel, but function of this second wheel is not to remove the material, but this one is going to be a regulating wheel. And in sketch you can see that this is the cylindrical workpiece which is supported by this rest blade. Means there is one grinding wheel, there is another grinding wheel, sorry, not that close, let me use the blank screen. This is one grinding wheel, this is another grinding wheel, and in between those two, this is workpiece, and this workpiece will be supported by this wedge rest, so it will not fall down. But this workpiece is free when this will rotate and this will rotate. Along with those two, the workpiece will also rotate, as well as the grinding wheel will remove material from the work surface, and the whole workpiece will get machined simultaneously. In 3D view, the workpiece will enter in this direction or in this direction depending upon the nature of this regulating wheel. If workpiece enters in this direction, these two wheels will continuously rotate, and this workpiece enters from here, the material will start removing from the workpiece surface, and gradually workpiece will move in this direction. The workpiece will keep moving in this direction. Those two wheels, this one will keep removing material, and this one will keep regulating the workpiece. And that way, from one workpiece enters, and another end, a finished workpiece will come out of those two grinding wheels. Now the first wheel, we are calling this one as grinding wheel and second one as regulating wheel, because this grinding wheel and workpiece will be, or those axis of those two will be parallel to each other, but axis of this third wheel will be tilted compared to those two, or compared to this grinding wheel, the axis of this regulating wheel will be tilted slightly. And because of that one, what will happen, when workpiece is provided or inserted through this end, because of its inclination, when workpiece comes in contact with this grinding wheel, it will gradually keep moving in this direction depending upon the inclination and its rotational speed. So that way, this wheel will keep removing the material and this wheel will regulates the motion of the workpiece, and because of that one, the another wheel is called as a regulating wheel. Now the centerless grinding could be used to for the through grinding in the sense the workpiece enters from this end and goes out from this end, and its whole surface will be machined. Or in this another example of plunge grinding, only this much surface is supposed to be ground, and this is head, and it is not supposed to be machined. So to control its motion, there will be one end stop over here. So from here, workpiece will be provided. It will gradually move in this direction till this end, and when it comes in contact with this end, its motion will be restricted. So only this much length will be machined, and that operation is called as plunge grinding. So this is example of centerless grinding. Heavy stock removal. Now we can easily talk about this one. Heavy stock removal means the material removal rate has to be maximum. The surface finish or accuracy will be less important. The important thing is maximize the material removal rate. While applying grinding process, you can use this condition initially when, suppose this is a raw material and this is actual product. Let me draw the product again. Okay, so this is the product. So while removing this much material, I need not to worry about the dimensions and all, right? So during removal of this material, I can go for this heavy stock removal. So coarse abrasive would be there, a large depth of cut would be there, high rotational speeds would be there, and using that condition, I will try to remove maximum material from the work surface. And once this much stock is removed, then I will shift to the fine grinding, where accuracy and surface properties of the workpiece surfaces are important. So machining using that rough grinding condition is also called as heavy stock removal grinding. Next one, grinding chatter. Now grinding chatter means if you have used a single point cutting tool on lathe machine to produce the cylindrical surfaces, sometimes you might have observed that on that cylindrical workpiece, there will be a generation of some pattern, and that pattern is nothing but chatter marks. The reason behind development of those chatter marks is the vibrations in the machine tool. Because of the vibrations occurred or present during machining the workpiece, means this is cylindrical workpiece, this is cutting tool, those two are going to be in direct contact continuously, and if machine vibrates, what will happen? There will be engagement and disengagement of the cutting tool and workpiece, and that will create some pattern on the work surface, and that pattern is nothing but the chatter marks. Now, the reason for that vibrations could be related to machine itself, or the sources of that vibration could be external also. So what sources could be there? The sources could be here. The sources might be the bearings and spindles of the grinding machine, the non-uniformities in the grinding wheel, uneven wheel wear. As I said earlier, if wheel has got some huge cavity on its surface while grinding operations, that cavity is going to result in engagement and disengagement of the workpiece and grinding wheel, and that is going to create vibrations and ultimately result in chatter. So uneven wheel wear is there. Poor dressing techniques. The purpose of dressing is to remove some layer from the grinding wheel surface, exposing the fresh abrasives. But if you dress that abrasive wheel or grinding wheel using some poor technique without paying attention to much attention to what you are or how you are getting the final shape, you don't paid any attention towards the truing of the grinding wheel, and you got some random shape of the grinding wheel, then that is going to result in this chatter. Also, external sources could be like nearby machineries, means you are using a grinding machine. Suppose this is a room where there is one machine over here, one machine over here, one machine over here. This is grinding, this is milling, this is turning lathe machine, and all machines are working simultaneously. So what will happen? The vibrations present in one machine will be transferred to another machine through the flooring, and that may result in the vibrations and ultimately in chatters. So vibration need not to be related to machine itself, but neighboring machine also going to cause those vibrations and result ultimately going to result in chatter. So how to limit those chatter? To limit those chatter, what we need to do? We need to increase the stiffness of the grinding machine. The grinding machine has to be rigid, the grinding machine has to be stiff. Additionally, the work holding devices also need to be stiff, and the machine has to be provided with damping to minimize the vibrations. And if you minimize those vibrations, the grinding chatter will result in, or there would be a reduction in grinding chatter also. Okay. Design considerations. Design considerations means if you want to apply this grinding technique to machine some work material. I have got one workpiece to be machined and I want to apply grinding technique. So what care I should take? The first thing, the parts to be ground should be designed. So situation shouldn't be like take random workpiece, go to grinding machine and start grinding. This kind of scenario should not be there. Before applying grinding machine or grinding machining to certain workpiece, you need to design that workpiece. Design in the sense the workpiece, whether you could mount it securely, can you fit it in chucks properly, whether you have got magnetic tables, suitable fixtures, suitable work holding devices, all those things need to be considered before going for actual grinding. Second, if high dimensional accuracy is required, then interrupted surfaces in the sense holes and keyways. So if you want to have high dimensional accuracies, these holes and keyways should be avoided. Why these need to be avoided? Because these holes and keyways are going to result in vibrations, and that will result in chatter. Next, parts for cylindrical grinding should be balanced. That is but obvious, right? If this is headstock, this is tailstock, and in between I'm holding a workpiece. This is supposed to be rotated. Now this workpiece has got some huge projection over here. What will happen? If this workpiece is not balanced, when it starts rotating, that is going to result in vibrations, or even that is going to result in deflections of the machine parts. And if that occurs, the efficiency with which the workpiece should have grounded will fall drastically. Next, in centerless grinding, now in centerless grinding, we know that there would be one grinding wheel, there would be one regulating wheel, workpiece supported with wedge support, workpiece will enter in one direction, the grinding wheel will remove the material, regulating will regulate the speed and motion, and it will move in this direction. Whole workpiece will be machined. Now, while using this centerless grinding, the short workpieces will be difficult to grind. If this length is more, that is fine. But when it comes to grinding a short workpieces, that becomes difficult. Why it becomes difficult? Because in centerless grinding, we don't support the workpiece. What we do, we just place the workpiece in between two wheels, and there will be one support over here. It is like a wedge that is going to just stop it or restrict it from falling down. That's it. But it can move upward. It can tilt about its axis, right? Except falling down, all other motions are possible with workpiece. And if workpiece length is very small, it is going to be more, or it is going to be but obvious that it is going to tilt about its axis, and if it tilts about its axis, one surface and another surface, the grinding or material removal rates are going to be different, and the shape of the workpiece that is required, that you won't get. So when it comes to centerless grinding, the short workpieces are difficult to grind accurately. So we need to go for large workpieces only, or large workpieces can be more efficiently grind by using centerless grinding. Next, designs requiring accurate form grinding. Form grinding, we know, if I want to have particular shape on the workpiece, I will generate replica shape on the grinding wheel itself first, and then that wheel will be used to machine the workpiece. Okay, so in case of form grinding, if a high accuracy is required, then that geometry should be kept simple. Why we are saying this one? Because suppose this is workpiece, this is grinding wheel, and when we brought those two in contact with each other, we need to have this kind of cavity on the work surface. Okay. Now, when I use this grinding wheel to remove the material, the most prominent area that is going to fail is this one, because that is a pointed area, right? This is going to fail easily. Now, what will happen if this point fails? To get this point, I have to remove this much material. So this much area has to be removed to get this point. If again it fails, again I have to remove this much material to get this area, right? So when it comes to form grinding, and if that accuracy is required, then geometries should be kept simple to avoid frequent form dressing. And last one is deep and small holes and blind holes requiring internal grinding. Internal grinding, suppose this is workpiece and this is hole and its internal surface is to the ground. If I keep increasing its depth, the grinding wheel length is going to increase, and this slender grinding wheel means its diameter is very small compared to its length. And if such a grinding wheel is to be used, it is going to break very easily, and such operations should be avoided. So these are the grinding considerations that we need to take care of. Next, finishing operations. Okay, we are almost at the end of the unit number 1. Finishing operations. As I said, the unit number 1 is focusing on grinding operations. Additionally, we are going to take a look of few finishing operations also. So out of that finishing operations, the first category that we are going to talk about is coated abrasives. This point also we have discussed. Coated abrasives means the use of abrasive has got two parts. The first one, fix that abrasive on something. It may be a plate, it may be a disc, it may be a cloth, it may be a rope, anything. And fix abrasives on that surface and then use it as a cutting tool. This technique is called as coated or binded abrasives. And another one is using free abrasives. Means abrasives are not fixed on some surface, they are in a powder form itself, and those abrasives are used as it is to remove the material. That techniques are called as free abrasives. So free abrasives and coated abrasives. So coated abrasives has got certain techniques. First one is belt grinding. From this sketch you can easily get that there is a belt passing over the various pulleys. There is work holding fixture on which you will be putting workpiece while machining, and a belt circulated over these pulleys will be coated with the abrasives. The belt will have abrasives on its surface, and it will be rotated and circulated across those pulleys, and when you push workpiece against that belt, abrasives will remove the material. If you find this diagram difficult, you can draw this one in the examination. This is also fine. This is from the textbook, and this one I have got from the internet. This is better for understanding, but this one is easier. So that is belt grinding. Similar to belt grinding, another example is wire brushing. So wire brushing is, there will be wires fixed on a brush, either a flat or cylindrical or any shape. It will be rotated, and when you move workpiece across this rotating brush, it will remove material from the work surface. Now the brush is made up of metal wire. If metal wires are there, then those metal wires will not be coated with any abrasives as such. The metal wires will be directly connected to a support. It will be rotated, and when you move workpiece surface across that metal wire brush, it will generate some pattern on the work surface. The application of this metal wire brush is usually creating some pattern on the work surface that might be used for holding purpose or some for some specific applications. In some cases, polymer wires are also used, but those polymer wires will be embedded with abrasives. Means that polymer wires will have abrasives coated on its surface, and when that brush is rotated and workpiece is moved across that brush, these abrasives will remove the material, and you will get the desired finish and accuracy. These are finishing operations, so material removal rate is going to be very small, but accuracy and surface finish are going to be better compared to grinding and all. Usually in case of wire brushing, the rotational speed of that brush ranges from 750 to 3500 rpm. So rotational speed is going to be vary in this range, and the application is, in most of the cases, is to produce the surface having some texture on it. Next, honing process. From this sketch, you will get idea of the honing. This one is piston cylinder block. These are the various cylinders in which pistons are going to have reciprocating motion. And when piston reciprocates inside the cylinder, the friction has to be minimum. And to reduce that friction to minimum value, the surface roughness also has to be minimum, or surface finish has to be maximum. So usually what they do in case of honing, this is the tool. The tool you can see over here, that will be having some metal part used for the holding purpose, that is called as spindle, and on this end there will be a strips of abrasive called as stone and non-abrading bronze guide. There will be alternative strip of this bronze material that plates are going to act as a or those plates are going to guide this honing tool when it is inserted in the hole. So this is cylinder hole in which this honing tool is to be inserted and rotated. So when it is inserted in that cylinder hole, these plates are going to guide the motion, and stone is nothing but the abrasive sticks fixed on this periphery. Those sticks are, or those stones are going to actually remove the material. So this whole thing will be put into the hole and rotated with certain velocity. So internal surface of this hole will be machined. The surface finish that you can obtain with the honing is going to be far better compared to regular grinding. And because the application is like that only, that is the piston cylinder surfaces where surface finish has to be maximum.